The vastness of space stretched endlessly around them, a dark canvas dotted with stars that seemed cold and distant. The crew of the small research vessel had been on a long mission, far from Earth, exploring regions that few humans had ever reached. At first, their journey had been filled with excitement and curiosity. They had seen things no one else had, swirling nebulae, sparkling asteroid fields, and distant planets with colors that seemed almost unreal. But now, the excitement had faded. The joy of discovery had been replaced with fear and desperation. It all began with a series of technical failures that none of them could have predicted. The vessel's navigation system had started to glitch, sending them off course into an area of space that was poorly mapped. Then came the communication blackout. Every attempt to contact Earth or nearby stations was met with silence. The crew had hoped it would only last a few hours, but as the hours turned into days, hope began to fade. Supplies were limited, and every passing moment made the situation feel more desperate. Captain Elena Ruiz, the leader of the mission, moved through the corridors of the ship with a steady but weary gait. She had been trained for emergencies, and she knew that panic could destroy them faster than any mechanical failure. Still, she could not hide the tension in her expression. Every decision carried weight. A single wrong move could endanger everyone. She stopped by the control room, where the screens flickered with warnings, oxygen levels dropping slightly faster than expected, power fluctuations in the main engine, and minor leaks in the life support system. Each warning was small on its own, but together, they painted a picture of a ship slowly running out of time. Her crew worked silently, each person lost in their own thoughts. There was Amir, the young engineer, who had always been fascinated by machines. He now stared at the console, hands hovering over the controls, muttering to himself as he tried to keep the failing systems online. He was terrified but refused to show it openly. There was Li Mei, the biologist, who had joined the mission to study alien ecosystems. She now spent her time checking the limited food supplies, counting rations, and worrying about how long they could survive if help did not arrive. Then there was Jaden, the pilot, whose usual confidence had given way to a quiet tension. His hands shook slightly as he ran simulations of possible escape routes, none of which seemed promising. The ship was small, cramped, and unforgiving. Every day felt longer than the last, every hour heavier than the one before. The crew missed the simplicity of Earth, the feel of gravity, the warmth of sunlight, and even the ordinary sounds of life like birds chirping or rain falling. Here, in the vacuum of space, there was only silence, broken by the occasional hum of machinery. The isolation pressed on them, a constant reminder that they were alone in a place that did not forgive mistakes. Despite their fears, the crew did their best to keep up appearances. Meals were eaten together when possible, small jokes were exchanged to lift the mood, and Elena made sure to check on each person personally. She knew that morale was as important as oxygen or fuel. But she could see the cracks forming. Some crew members whispered about giving up, about accepting that rescue might never come. Others kept silent, focusing only on the work at hand, but their eyes betrayed the worry they tried to hide. One evening, as the ship drifted past a cluster of distant stars, the tension reached a breaking point. Amir had been working on a repair for hours, and his hands were sore and dirty from the constant adjustments. He slammed a panel shut and muttered under his breath, "We're running out of time. Something has to happen soon." Li Mei looked up from her ration calculations. "We have to believe help is coming. We have no other choice." Jaden shook his head. "Belief won't fix the engine, Mei. We need a plan that works now, not just hope." Elena listened to them, her mind racing. She knew that despair could spread like wildfire, consuming the crew's ability to act. She took a deep breath and spoke, her voice calm but firm. "We focus on what we can control. We stabilize the systems, conserve supplies, and keep watch for any signs of rescue. Panicking won't help, but clever action might." Her words brought a small measure of relief, though she could see that the fear lingered. The nights in space were the hardest. Without the natural rhythms of day and night, time became a blur. Sleep was fitful, punctuated by alarms and sudden shifts in the ship's systems. Some nights, the crew gathered in the small common area, staring at the dark through the thick reinforced windows, imagining the vast void stretching forever beyond. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. The stars were so far away that they seemed unreachable, like distant promises that might never be fulfilled. Amid the fear, small acts of humanity shone through. Li Mei carefully prepared a small meal for Amir when she noticed he hadn't eaten properly. Jaden shared old stories from his training days to lighten the mood. Elena took the time to write a short message to Earth, even knowing it might never reach anyone. These moments reminded them that they were not just surviving, they were still human, still capable of care and hope. But the danger was never far away. One morning, the crew awoke to a sudden warning, a critical leak in the oxygen system. The alarms blared, red lights flashing across the control room. Amir and Jaden rushed to the section, trying to seal the breach before it could worsen. Li Mei monitored the life support readings, her hands shaking slightly. Elena coordinated the efforts, barking instructions and offering encouragement. Minutes felt like hours as they worked against time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the leak was contained. The oxygen levels stabilized, but the scare left everyone shaken. That night, the crew gathered quietly in the common area, too tired to talk. Elena looked at each of them, seeing exhaustion etched into their faces. She knew that the next few days would be critical. They could not survive much longer without help. The realization hung heavily over them, they were at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. And yet, in that moment, a tiny spark of determination remained. They had survived this long. Perhaps, somehow, they could survive a little longer. Outside the ship, the stars continued their silent dance. The universe was vast, indifferent, and beautiful. It offered no comfort, no guidance, only the infinite darkness stretching in every direction. And yet, inside the small vessel, the crew clung to each other and to the fragile hope that help might still be coming. It was a hope that had no proof, no guarantees, just a feeling, a whisper in the hearts of those who refused to give up. As they settled in for another uncertain night, Elena took one last look at the control panels. She made a silent promise to her crew, they would not give up, no matter how impossible the situation seemed. They would fight, they would endure, and they would wait for whatever help the universe might send. Because even in the darkest void, even when it seemed that no one was coming, humans had a stubborn way of surviving. And sometimes, survival meant more than just staying alive, it meant keeping hope alive. The days that followed were long and tense. The crew of the small vessel continued their routine of checking systems, conserving supplies, and trying to maintain hope, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down on everyone. Every beep from the control panels, every flicker of a light, and every minor warning from the engines reminded them that time was running out. Their isolation felt heavier with each passing hour. The vast emptiness of space seemed endless, and with no signals from Earth or nearby stations, it was hard to believe anyone would ever come. Amir, the young engineer, had been working almost non-stop to keep the ship's systems functional. He repaired circuits, patched leaks, and monitored power output. Each time a system failed, it was like a small defeat. Yet, he refused to give up. He had a quiet determination that often went unnoticed, but it kept the vessel moving, inch by inch, through the dark void. Li Mei often found him at the console late into the night, rubbing his eyes, hands smudged with grease, murmuring to himself. She could see the strain in his posture but also the stubborn will to survive. One afternoon, Jaden, the pilot, was reviewing the navigational maps for what felt like the 100th time. They were in uncharted territory, and every attempt to plot a safe course seemed more complicated than the last. "There's nothing here," he muttered under his breath, frustration creeping into his voice. No routes, no stations, no signs of life anywhere. It's like we're floating in a completely empty universe. Elena stood beside him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. We've come this far. That counts for something. We just need to keep watching and thinking. Someone will find us. They have to. Even as they clung to hope, small signs of danger continued to appear. The oxygen systems showed minor fluctuations, the engine's temperature occasionally spiked, and the ship's hull occasionally groaned under the strain of cosmic radiation. Every problem reminded the crew that they were vulnerable, and yet, they faced these challenges together. Every repair, every calculation, every effort to hold the vessel together was a shared struggle, a testament to their resilience. Then, one quiet morning, something unexpected happened. The sensors, which had mostly shown static for days, began to pick up a faint signal in the distance. At first, it was barely noticeable, a small blip that could have been a glitch or random noise. Amir noticed it first, frowning at the readings. "Captain," he said, pointing at the screen, "you might want to see this." Elena joined him, studying the screen carefully. "Is it real?" she asked, hope and caution mixing in her voice. Amir shook his head. "I'm not sure. It's weak, but it's consistent. It could be someone. Or something." The crew gathered around the control panel, curiosity and hope flickering in their eyes. Li Mei's heart beat faster. "Do you think it could be a rescue ship?" she asked quietly, almost afraid to hope. Jaden looked skeptical. "Or it could be a false signal, a glitch in the system. We've been fooled before." Elena nodded, acknowledging the possibility. "We don't know yet. But we'll watch it closely. If it is help, we need to be ready." For hours, the crew monitored the signal, tracking its movement and strength. Every fluctuation caused tension in the room. Sometimes it seemed to fade, and the fear of disappointment returned. Other times, it grew slightly stronger, giving them brief glimpses of hope. The crew worked in shifts, ensuring that someone was always observing the readings. Each blip was analyzed, discussed, and cross-checked. It was tedious and exhausting, but it was also the first sign in days that they might not be completely alone. Despite the uncertainty, small changes began to appear in the crew's behavior. Meals, once eaten in silence and gloom, now included conversation about the possibility of rescue. They shared stories of Earth, of their families, and of the things they would do if they returned safely. Laughter, though rare, began to return, fragile but genuine. These moments of connection reminded them that hope was not just a feeling, it was a lifeline. Elena worked tirelessly to keep the crew focused. She organized shifts, set tasks, and ensured that every member had a role. "We may be far from home," she said during one briefing, "but we are not helpless. Every repair we make, every calculation we do, keeps us alive. And now, we may have a chance for rescue. Stay ready. Stay calm. Don't give up." Her words were met with nods, though the worry in their eyes remained. As days passed, the signal became slightly stronger and more defined. It was still far away, but the consistency gave the crew a renewed sense of purpose. Amir and Jaden worked together to adjust the ship's trajectory slightly, hoping to improve their chances of connecting with whatever was sending the signal. Li Mei ensured that supplies were rationed carefully, preparing for a longer wait if necessary. Even the smallest tasks now felt meaningful, each action a step closer to survival. Then came the first real sign that they were not alone. The sensors picked up a faint object moving toward them, massive enough to register on the ship's radar. The crew gathered around the displays, hearts pounding. "It's big," Jaden whispered. "Really big. Could it be a warship?" Elena's eyes widened slightly, but she kept her composure. "We don't know yet. But it's moving toward us. Prepare for contact. Preparations began immediately. The crew secured all loose equipment, ran final checks on the life support systems, and ensured that emergency protocols were ready. Fear and anticipation mingled in the air, creating an electric tension. They were no longer just waiting, they were expecting, hoping, praying that help would arrive before it was too late. Even amid the chaos, small acts of courage shone through. Amir worked on reinforcing a weak panel in the hull, humming softly to calm himself. Li Mei tended to the medical bay, preparing for any injuries that might occur during contact. Jaden ran simulations of possible docking scenarios, ready to take control at a moment's notice. Elena moved among them, offering encouragement, checking on each person's mental state, and reminding them to stay focused. As the object drew closer, it became more real, a massive vessel, sleek and powerful, moving through the darkness like a force of nature. The crew could hardly believe their eyes. It was unlike anything they had seen, a symbol of human ingenuity and strength. The ship roared through space, engines glowing faintly as it adjusted its course toward them. For a moment, the crew forgot their fear, simply staring in awe at the sight before them. But even as hope surged, Elena reminded them to stay alert. "This is not over," she said. "The danger isn't gone yet. Stay ready." The crew nodded, their faces a mix of awe and tension. They had survived so far through skill, determination, and teamwork, and now they would need every ounce of those qualities to make it through the next phase, the actual rescue. The night stretched long as they watched the approaching vessel. Every minute felt like an hour. They shared quiet conversations about what life might be like once they were safe. They talked about family, about Earth, and about the strange, beautiful world they were seeing from afar. Each shared story was a reminder of what they were fighting for, a thread of humanity holding them together in the vast void. As the first light from the approaching ship reflected off their own hull, a sense of cautious hope settled over the crew. They were not alone. Help was coming. It was not yet here, but it was real. And in that moment, every sacrifice, every worry, and every sleepless hour felt worth it. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the crew allowed themselves to believe. They had faced the void, stared down despair, and still held on to hope. And now, as the distant lights of the rescue vessel grew brighter, they prepared to meet the force that had come roaring from the void, a human warship that might just save them all. The massive human warship moved through the darkness of space like a living giant, its engines glowing faintly against the black backdrop of the void. Every person aboard the small research vessel stared at the approaching silhouette, their hearts pounding in unison. After days of fear, isolation, and uncertainty, this was the moment they had been waiting for. Help was no longer a distant hope, it was real, enormous, and hurtling toward them. Captain Elena Ruiz felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. She knew that the approaching vessel represented salvation, but she also understood the risks. Docking with a ship of that size, moving at high velocity, in the uncharted depths of space, was no small task. One miscalculation, one error in judgment, and the rescue could turn into disaster. Still, she remained calm on the outside, giving her crew the confidence they desperately needed. Jaden, the pilot, had never experienced anything like this. He had trained for emergencies, had studied docking procedures, and had read countless reports of rescue operations, but nothing prepared him for the scale and power of the vessel approaching them. "It's huge," he muttered, his eyes wide as he traced the contours of the ship on the screen. "It's like a fortress, but it's coming straight for us." Amir, the engineer, nodded without speaking, his fingers moving nervously over the controls. Every system of their own small vessel had to be stable, or the slightest turbulence from the warship's engines could tip them into disaster. The crew worked tirelessly, making final adjustments and checking every system. They secured loose equipment, reinforced weak panels, and made sure the life support systems were at maximum efficiency. Li Mei, the biologist, assisted by monitoring oxygen levels and ensuring that emergency medical supplies were ready. Even the smallest details mattered. A single oversight could cost lives, and each crew member understood the weight of responsibility pressing down on them. The warship drew closer, and with it came a sense of overwhelming energy. The ship's engines produced a low, vibrating hum that traveled through space and even through the hull of the small vessel. The sound, though not loud in the conventional sense, was a reminder of the power of human engineering, a force capable of bridging the gap between desperation and salvation. For a moment, the crew allowed themselves to marvel at it, their fears giving way to awe. But awe could not last long in space. As the warship approached, a sudden burst of cosmic debris appeared in their path. Small fragments of rock, drifting at high speed, threatened to strike the small vessel. Jaden reacted immediately, maneuvering the ship to avoid the worst of the debris. "Hold on," he shouted, his voice tight with concentration. Elena gripped the edge of a console, feeling her heart race. Amir monitored the shields, boosting power where needed to prevent the smallest fragment from puncturing their hull. Time seemed to slow as the debris passed. The crew moved as one, each person focused entirely on their role. The seconds stretched into minutes, and finally, the immediate danger subsided. The warship continued its approach, steady and relentless, and the crew let out a collective sigh of relief. It was still not over, but they had survived another test. Communication with the warship became possible at last, a brief burst of signals that indicated the vessel was aware of their presence and preparing for docking. A calm, commanding voice echoed through their communication system. "This is the human rescue vessel Vanguard. We have you in our sights. Prepare for boarding assistance." Elena's hands shook slightly as she responded. "Copy that. We are ready." The next few minutes were critical. The warship was enormous compared to their own vessel, and every maneuver required precision. Jaden ran continuous simulations, calculating angles, velocity, and trajectory adjustments. Amir monitored energy outputs and shield stability, while Li Mei kept a careful eye on environmental systems. Elena coordinated all actions, issuing instructions and reassuring the crew. Despite their exhaustion and fear, each crew member rose to the challenge, working together in a way that was both disciplined and instinctive. Finally, the warship was close enough that the docking process could begin. Massive arms extended from the warship, glowing faintly as they locked onto the small vessel. The crew watched in amazement as the docking mechanisms moved with precision, adjusting for the smallest shifts in motion. Elena held her breath, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. This was the moment when everything could go wrong, but also the moment when their survival hung in the balance. The first connection was made, a gentle but firm grip that held the small vessel steady against the warship. Jaden carefully adjusted thrusters to stabilize their position, while Amir monitored every system, ready to respond to any sudden changes. Li Mei checked oxygen levels and structural integrity, ensuring that no damage had occurred during the initial docking. For the first time in days, the crew allowed themselves a moment of cautious relief. But the rescue was not complete. The warship's crew began preparing a transfer operation, sending specialized shuttles to bring the stranded crew aboard. Elena briefed her team, explaining the order in which they would board and what to do in case of any problems. "Stay calm," she said firmly. "Follow the procedure exactly. Help is here. We just have to reach it." The crew nodded, a renewed determination shining in their eyes. The shuttles approached, small against the massive backdrop of the warship, but perfectly capable of completing the task. Each crew member boarded carefully, following the instructions of the rescuers and trusting their skill. The journey from one vessel to the other was tense but efficient. Elena led the way, making sure no one was left behind. Amir, Li Mei, and Jaden followed closely, each step bringing them closer to safety. Once aboard the warship, the crew was overwhelmed by the scale and technology of the vessel. Lights glowed softly along the corridors, Systems hummed with quiet efficiency, and the environment felt secure in a way that the small research vessel could never provide. The crew took a moment to absorb their surroundings, a mix of relief, exhaustion, and awe filling their senses. They were finally safe, and the reality of rescue was slowly sinking in. Even as they recovered, the crew could not forget the dangers they had faced. They spoke in quiet tones about the moments of fear, the repairs that seemed impossible, and the choices that had kept them alive. Each story reinforced the sense of teamwork and resilience that had carried them through. Elena listened, offering encouragement and praise, reminding them that their efforts had not been in vain. The warship's captain met them personally, a commanding presence who radiated confidence and calm. "You have done well to survive this long," the captain said. "Your actions have been brave and smart. Now, you are safe. We will bring you home." The words brought tears to the eyes of some crew members, a release of emotion that had been building for days. For the first time in what felt like forever, they allowed themselves to relax, to breathe fully, and to feel the warmth of safety. Even as the rescue operation concluded, the crew reflected on the lessons they had learned. Fear and despair had been constant companions, but so had determination, ingenuity, and hope. They had worked together under pressure, trusted each other in the face of danger, and refused to give up even when the odds seemed impossible. These were qualities that could not be measured by technology or skill alone. They were human traits, shining brightly against the darkness of space. The night passed quietly aboard the warship, a calm after the storm of tension and danger. The crew rested in secure quarters, sleep finally coming without interruption. The small vessel they had left behind drifted silently in the void, a reminder of how fragile survival could be and how powerful hope could become when paired with skill and courage. By morning, the crew was ready to move forward, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they had made it. They knew the journey was not over. They still had to return home, but they also knew that they had faced the worst and survived. The warship's engines roared gently as it set a course back toward human territory, a steady, reassuring presence in the vast emptiness of space. For Elena and her crew, the memory of being stranded in the void would never fade. The fear, the uncertainty, and the isolation had tested them in ways they could never have imagined. But so had the hope, the teamwork, and the bravery they had discovered within themselves. And now, aboard the human warship, they had proof that help could come even when all seemed lost, that survival was possible, and that human courage could shine brightly, even in the darkest corners of the universe. The moment the crew of the small research vessel stepped aboard the human warship, a wave of relief washed over them, but it was only the beginning. Being on solid ground, solid in a zero-gravity sense, did not erase the tension that had built over the past days. Each crew member still felt the weight of their recent ordeal, the long hours in space, the constant danger, and the fear of being left alone in the void. But now, with help so close, they could finally focus on surviving the final stage, the complete rescue and integration into the warship's operations. Elena Ruiz took the lead, moving through the warship's corridors with a mixture of awe and practicality. The vessel was massive compared to their tiny research ship, with wide hallways, glowing control panels, and machines that hummed with precise efficiency. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of careful design. Everything was built to withstand the harsh realities of space travel while protecting the lives of those aboard. Despite the advanced technology surrounding them, Elena kept her mind focused on the mission, making sure every member of her crew was safe, accounted for, and prepared for the next steps. The warship's crew guided them through the initial procedures. First came medical checks. Even though none of the stranded crew had sustained serious injuries, the long hours of stress and limited oxygen had left their bodies weak. Li Mei, who normally tended to biological studies, watched closely as medics checked their vitals. Pulse rates, oxygen levels, and minor bruises were noted, and the medics gave advice on recovery exercises and dietary needs. Elena quietly thanked the medical team. "Your timing is perfect," she said. "We needed this more than you realize." Once the medical checks were complete, the crew was taken to a briefing room where the warship's captain explained the plan for their journey back home. The captain's calm voice carried authority, but also reassurance. "You have endured an extraordinary situation," the captain said. "Your survival is a testament to human determination. We will now bring you safely back to human territory. During the journey, you will be trained in the ship's emergency procedures so that you can remain safe and assist us if needed." Elena nodded, encouraging her crew to pay close attention. Every detail was vital, and the captain's instructions would make the difference between smooth travel and unexpected risk. Training began almost immediately. The crew learned to operate emergency hatches, understand oxygen supply procedures, and move safely in zero-gravity conditions aboard the warship. Jaden took the exercises seriously, quickly mastering the navigation of the larger vessel's corridors. Amir focused on understanding the ship's engineering systems, curious to see how they differed from the smaller vessel. Even Li Mei, initially hesitant, adapted quickly, recognizing that knowledge could provide both confidence and safety. Each crew member contributed to the learning process, and their previous experience surviving the void gave them a perspective that even the warship's regular crew respected. Despite the structured training, moments of levity and human connection emerged. Crew members shared stories of Earth, joking about what they would eat first upon returning, and comparing their small vessel's cramped quarters to the vast space aboard the warship. Laughter echoed softly through the corridors, a healing sound that reminded them that survival was not just about avoiding danger, it was about living, connecting, and feeling alive once more. Elena smiled quietly at these interactions, understanding that morale was as important as oxygen or shields. But even amid the comfort and training, challenges appeared. A sudden alert rang through the ship. A small asteroid cluster was detected near their current path. The warship's systems automatically calculated avoidance maneuvers, but the alert reminded everyone that danger in space was never far away. Jaden and Amir assisted the warship's crew in monitoring the calculations, making minor adjustments as needed. The asteroid field passed without incident, but the scare was enough to remind the rescued crew of the fragility of life in space. They were safe for now, but vigilance was still necessary. As the warship traveled further, the rescued crew began to process the events that had brought them here. Each member reflected quietly on their experiences: the fear of being stranded, the moments when hope seemed impossible, and the small victories that had kept them alive. Elena thought about her own decisions, wondering if she had done everything she could to protect her team. Amir considered the repairs he had made, the long hours of concentration and sweat that had ensured the ship remained operational. Li Mei recalled rationing supplies and keeping everyone's health monitored. And Jaden remembered every calculation, every adjustment, and every choice that had kept them on course. In private conversations, they shared these reflections with one another. The discussions were emotional, sometimes bringing tears or quiet laughter. They spoke of the fear they had faced and how it had changed them, the resilience they had discovered within themselves, and the gratitude they now felt toward the warship's crew. These conversations helped them process the trauma, turning fear into understanding and hope into determination. Meanwhile, Elena maintained her leadership role, ensuring that the crew remained coordinated and focused. She checked on their physical condition, encouraged participation in training, and guided them through recovery exercises. She also fostered teamwork between her crew and the warship's personnel, emphasizing that cooperation would ensure everyone's safety. The rescued crew had already faced extreme challenges, and Elena knew that continued teamwork would be essential for the remaining journey. During one of the training exercises, a minor malfunction occurred in the warship's life support system. The alarm sounded briefly, and the crew quickly followed the emergency procedures they had learned. Elena guided her team, ensuring calm and efficiency. The malfunction was minor, resolved quickly by the ship's engineers, but it served as a stark reminder: space could be dangerous even on a well-equipped vessel. The rescued crew gained confidence, however, seeing that even potential crises could be managed successfully with knowledge and teamwork. Days passed, and the warship approached the edge of human-controlled space. The tension of isolation faded with every mile closer to home. The crew could now envision Earth, distant but tangible, a destination for rest, recovery, and reconnection with family and friends. Elena organized small moments of celebration, marking milestones of distance traveled and systems mastered. The atmosphere, once tense with fear, gradually shifted to one of cautious optimism. By the time the warship reached a region monitored by human authorities, the rescued crew felt stronger, more prepared, and ready to return to normal life. They had endured isolation, fear, and the threat of disaster, and now they had a renewed appreciation for teamwork, skill, and human courage. Each member reflected on the lessons learned, the importance of preparation, the power of hope, and the strength that could be found in supporting one another. As the warship prepared to transition from deep space travel to a safer, monitored route, the rescued crew gathered together for a quiet moment of reflection. Elena looked at each of them and spoke softly, "We faced the void, and we survived. We were tested in ways that few humans ever experience. And we did not give up. Today, we are safe because we trusted ourselves, each other, and the help that came. Remember this feeling, because it will guide you in the future." The crew nodded, understanding the truth in her words. They had survived the void, faced despair, and experienced the relief of rescue. They had discovered reserves of courage they did not know existed and had relied on skill, determination, and hope to stay alive. And now, aboard the human warship, they were ready to return home, carrying with them a story of survival, human resilience, and the power of help arriving just when it was needed most. The warship's engines hummed steadily as it glided through space, and the rescued crew looked out at the stars with a sense of gratitude and awe. The endless void that had once seemed so terrifying now felt a little smaller, a little less frightening, because they knew that help could arrive even in the darkest corners. They had learned that survival was not just about skill or technology, it was about courage, trust, and the belief that they could endure. Together. The journey back to human-controlled space continued smoothly aboard the human warship, but the crew of the small research vessel had more than just distance to travel. They were carrying a new understanding of themselves, their limits, and the strength of human resilience. Each day, as the vast emptiness of space stretched around them, they reflected on what they had endured. They thought about the fear, the isolation, and the desperate hours when hope seemed impossible. And now, they were alive. They had survived. Captain Elena Ruiz watched her crew closely. She could see subtle changes in them, the way Amir moved with more confidence, how Lime carried herself with a sense of calm determination, and how Jaden's normally restless energy had transformed into quiet focus. Each of them had grown stronger, not only because of the challenges they faced, but also because they had supported each other through the hardest moments of their lives. Elena felt a deep sense of pride and relief. Their survival was a testament not only to their own courage but also to the power of teamwork and human ingenuity. The warship's daily routine was both calming and structured. The crew participated in drills, learned more about the ship's systems, and practiced emergency procedures. These exercises reminded them of how much they had already learned, but also how vital preparation was. Elena emphasized that knowledge and readiness were key to survival, and she encouraged her crew to ask questions and participate actively. "Every lesson we take with us," she said, "makes us stronger, smarter, and safer. Remember, we are human, and humans survive because we plan, we act, and we trust each other." During the quiet hours, when the ship glided through the stillness of space, the crew took time to process their emotions. They talked about the fear that had haunted them, the moments of doubt when they thought rescue would never come, and the relief they felt when the warship appeared on the horizon. Lime, who had always been the most reserved, shared her thoughts quietly. "I never imagined we could make it," she admitted. "But I also never imagined how much hope could carry us through. It's strange, fear and hope, side by side, yet hope was stronger in the end." Amir nodded, adding, "Every repair, every calculation, every small choice mattered. And it's amazing to think that we all did it together. Even Jaden, who often relied on action rather than reflection, shared a story about the moments when he thought they might not survive. "I kept thinking about Earth," he said. "About family, about friends, about walking outside and feeling the sun. It was those thoughts that pushed me to keep going, even when it felt impossible." Elena smiled at him. "That is the power of hope," she said softly. "It gives us the courage to act when fear wants us to give up. And it keeps us alive long enough for help to arrive." The crew also took time to appreciate the warship and its personnel. They saw firsthand how preparation, skill, and coordination could make survival possible, even in the most dangerous environments. The warship's crew treated them with respect and care, guiding them through procedures and explaining systems in ways that were both educational and reassuring. It was a reminder that humans, when organized and united, could achieve remarkable things. As the days passed, the crew began to think about returning to Earth. The thought was both exciting and nerve-wracking. They had endured so much, but the journey home would bring its own challenges. Reintegration into normal life, explaining their experiences, and processing the emotional weight of what they had survived were all things that awaited them. Yet, the crew felt ready. They had faced the void, stared into the darkness, and survived against incredible odds. They had learned lessons that would stay with them forever: the value of courage, the power of hope, and the importance of trusting and relying on others. One evening, as the ship passed a particularly bright star cluster, the crew gathered in a quiet observation area. They watched the stars twinkle in the vastness of space, each one a reminder of how small yet significant they were in the universe. Elena spoke quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "We were lost in the void, with no sign of help. And yet, we survived. That is what it means to be human, to keep going, even when the odds seem impossible. To trust ourselves, and each other. To hold on to hope, no matter how faint it seems." Li Mei nodded, tears in her eyes. "I think I understand now. Survival isn't just about avoiding danger. It's about perseverance, courage, and believing that help can arrive even when all seems lost." Amir added, "And about working together. We couldn't have made it alone. Each of us mattered. Every choice mattered. That is what kept us alive." Jaden, usually the first to crack a joke or shrug off emotion, added quietly, "I will never forget how it felt when the warship appeared. That moment changed everything. It reminded me that even in the darkest place, humans have a way of finding each other and helping each other survive." Elena looked at her crew, feeling a deep sense of pride. They had endured a situation that tested the limits of human resilience, and now they understood more about themselves, about humanity, and about the power of hope. As the warship neared human-controlled space, communication with Earth became possible again. Signals from mission control arrived, and the voices of family, friends, and colleagues reached the crew. Relief, joy, and disbelief filled the air as they heard familiar voices for the first time in days. Messages of congratulations and reassurance reminded them of the world they had left behind and were soon to return to. The experience of being lost in the void was still fresh in their minds, but now it was tempered with the warmth of connection and the certainty of safety. Upon nearing the docking point near Earth, the crew of the small vessel felt a mix of anticipation and gratitude. They were finally returning to solid ground, to familiar surroundings, and to people who had been waiting for them. But the journey had changed them. They would never see space the same way again. Every star, every planet, every void would remind them of the courage and teamwork that had carried them through. The experience would remain a permanent part of their lives, shaping how they thought, acted, and appreciated each other. Finally, the warship completed its final maneuvers, safely bringing the crew back to Earth's orbit. Rescue personnel and support teams awaited, prepared to assist with the transition to life on the planet. Elena and her crew stepped off the ship, feeling the pull of gravity, the warmth of Earth's atmosphere, and the reality of being home. Tears of relief and joy flowed freely as they embraced their rescuers and each other. The journey had been long, terrifying, and exhausting, but now it was complete. They had returned safely, alive, and forever changed. In the following days, the crew reflected deeply on their journey. Interviews, debriefings, and discussions helped them process the emotional and practical lessons learned. They spoke about fear, hope, teamwork, and resilience. They celebrated the skill, courage, and determination of the human warship crew who had saved them. And they recognized that their own perseverance had been essential. Survival had been a shared effort, a combination of human ingenuity, courage, and the simple determination to keep going. Elena, standing one evening on Earth's surface and looking up at the sky, thought about the journey they had endured. She thought about the void, the long hours of uncertainty, the moments when hope felt impossible, and the incredible relief of seeing the warship appear. She understood that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and often dangerous, but she also understood that human courage and compassion could shine brighter than the darkest void. Her crew gathered beside her, each person reflecting on the journey in their own way. They had survived something extraordinary, something that few humans would ever experience. And now, safe on Earth, they carried a story of hope, resilience, and triumph. A story that reminded them and everyone who would hear it that even when help seems impossible, it can arrive. That courage, teamwork, and determination can overcome fear. And that the human spirit is capable of surviving, thriving, and inspiring others, no matter how dark the void may seem. The experience would never be forgotten. Each member of the crew knew that they had been part of something remarkable. And as they looked up at the stars, now from the comfort and safety of home, they carried a lasting reminder: even in the darkest moments, help can come from the most unexpected places, courage can overcome fear, and hope can guide humanity through the void. The crew shared quiet smiles, gratitude, and an unspoken understanding that they had been changed forever. And in that shared silence, they celebrated survival, human determination, and the bright promise of the future.